waiting all week. Incredibly late on this. I know it's been talked about to death, but I haven't gotten to. So I wanted to talk about Tony Hinchcliffe and a lot of the response that he got, because it really was crazy to see everyone essentially. It's almost as if the world got together and said, let's do exactly what's best for Tony Hinchcliffe's career. It was wild to watch this play out. So this happened like 2 hours after our show last week, maybe not even. And Christian Blatt texts me, and he's one of these liberal cucks. He's like, "You got to see this Tony Hinchcliffe bombing on this rally at Madison Square Garden, the Trump rally." And I'm like, "Oh boy!" So I go back, and it was on a live feed on YouTube. Excuse me. And so I just went back and found it immediately, and I was like, "Oh, it seemed like whatever." I didn't think it was that big a deal. Little did I know, like, I didn't find it funny or not funny. It's weird when you find something like meh, people are like, looks at him like kissing Tony Hinchcliffe's ass. Like, no, I didn't hate it or love it. I wouldn't have reacted to it if the world didn't. So like, I kind of thought it's exactly what I thought Tony would do. I saw some of his stand up at Skankfest. He did a good portion of these jokes. So like, I kind of knew what to expect, and I didn't realize the world would melt down over it, and it would impact the election. It won't really, but people act like it will. So let's play first some of the Tony stuff, because even though it's been talked about for a week, there are parts that strangely never get played in the media. It's wild how they edit it differently than I would if you wanted to have it in the proper context. So let's hear from Tony at MSG.
Yes, this was Hispanic jokes, and Tony probably thought he was going to be the October surprise here, but then a little squirrel came along, and my God, totally shook things up.
True. So, yeah, these are jokes that weren't really reported. And what's always interesting to me is, like, there's certain... They cling on to one joke. The Puerto Rico joke became like, can you believe he said this? Tony tells other jokes in this set that were just as bad, quote unquote, like just as naughty. And they don't quote those jokes. And then if you bring them up, they're like, yeah, that too. He was racist. But it's like, no. Get as mad about everything, or you're proving it's fake. So these are jokes that no one gave a fuck about for some reason that preceded the Puerto Rico joke.
It's absolutely wild to see. And in Texas, stuff is really, really crazy. We're right there by a wide open border. Where are my proud Latinos at tonight? You guys see what I mean? It's wide open. There's so many of them. It's absolutely incredible.
Not to break down comedy, he's talking about the people he's performing in front of at the Trump rally.
Yeah.
He's talking about Latinos that are at a, quote, a Nazi rally. So clearly it's comedy. Like, I hate the idea that people spent a week trying to twist this into Tony's real beliefs or something. Now, there is part of Tony's act that I find kind of strange. He's kind of become an actual Trump guy. Like I said, when I saw his stand-up, he'll say, and even on Kill Tony, he'll say stuff about Trump where I'm like, he's not that politically minded. Why is he going down this road? And I think it's simply because Tony's a good marketer. Like, he was a WWE fan who knows how to rile people up, so he knows that if he's pro-Trump, that's like... Trey and Matt said it a few years ago, the South Park guys said, like, I guess we're technically Republicans because Republicans are the only way you can be rebels now, essentially. They're not. I'm sure they're not voting for Trump, but, like, saying that is the only thing dangerous. If you are a liberal, it's just boring now. Because did you see what SNL did last night with Kamala Harris?
Just in my timeline on Twitter.
It was just boring. There was no comedy.
Yeah.
It was just incredibly boring. It was, they did it
Safe.
so that the crowd could go, woohoo! There's more cheering in it than jokes. It's crazy.
Don't get me started. I'm a liberal, old school liberal, but we used to be the party of First Amendment and free speech, and then Tipper Gore came along and it all got fucked up.
You were on, or I know HACKRIDE was on with that cuck Christian Blatt. What was his take on this? He texted me. He texted me holding his robe closed, like he was being assaulted. Like, I couldn't believe what Tony Hinchcliffe said.
I think a lot of people are like, in the moment, because this shit gets so hyped up and it's a political season. But free speech is on the ballot. It really fucking is, and that's unfortunate because, goddamn, I don't want to vote for that guy. But it does
a free
seem
country.
Like it does seem.
I thought like the liberals did a pretty good job of not doing this shit for the last 6 months or whatever. Like, you didn't hear a lot of finger wagging about words or jokes, or even when it comes to Trump, you didn't hear a lot of them bringing up like Trump said this about Mexicans or any of that stuff. They didn't get hung up on it for a while. They kind of played the smart approach because they know people are tired of that. And then it seems like just in the last month, they've been holding it in so long that they had to vomit it out. They're like, Tony Hinchcliffe and Trump said that. Now you even see it in the campaign ads again, where it's like, he said the thing about the rapists in Mexico, remember? And we're like, yeah, no, we remember. It didn't work in 2016. It's not going to work now.
And they kept the celebrities locked in the closet, and then in the last week, they just let them all out.
Yeah, they fucked up. They might have ruined everything for themselves.
Yeah, and then this goddamn squirrel, this fucking October surprise squirrel. Oh, you bastards. But anyway.
Back to Tony.
Believe it or not, people, I welcome migrants to the United States of America with open arms. And by open arms, I mean like this.
Can you describe for the audio listeners and myself?
Waving away. Get out of here. Go away. Go back home.
It's not bad. Like, that's not a bad joke. The other thing, too, is like, I think we have a clip of someone talking about this later, but like, the audience isn't mic'd for a comedy special. It's going to sound like he's bombing. Like, he's doing fine, it seems.
It's wild. And these Latinos, they love making babies, too. Just know that. They do. They do. There's no pulling out. They don't do that. They come inside, just like they did to our country. Republicans are the party with a good sense of humor.
So you can't take any of that and make it into a clippable, can you believe he said this? Because they're all so clearly jokes. Now, I would say the next one is also clearly a joke, but it was easier for people to be like, he's serious, and Trump also thinks that. It's like, it was so but it shows you the phoniness when it's like, well, there are other examples right there that you could have used of Tony's act, but those don't highlight him being, no one would listen to any of those clips and be like, he's a racist monster. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot going on. Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah. I think it's called Puerto Rico.
Pause real quick. That's where it's edited. For people to be like, oh my God, he called Puerto Rico an island of garbage. This part I didn't hear in all the clips or like the news coverage of it. For some reason, they stopped it right there. It's weird because if they just kept playing it, you would have said, no one would have gotten angry about it if they just kept playing it. It's so weird. It's almost like they wanted everyone to get angry.
Okay. All right. Okay. We're getting there. Again, normally I don't follow the national anthem, everybody. This isn't exactly a perfect comedy setup. There's some people here. All right. Very good.
Like, I thought the national anthem line was one of his better lines because it just shows everything that's wrong with that. It's like, oh, that's not a setup for comedy. If Tony was doing those on a stage, which I've heard him do, like I said, he did them at Skankfest. If Tony just did that, no one would react to it. I'll grant you this. This should have been the story. How weird is it that Trump had a comedian at this fucking rally? It doesn't make any sense. I don't give a fuck that he did it. It's an interesting experiment. You can do it or not do it again based on how you feel it went. But it is a weird setup for comedy. But to try and turn that into Tony was being serious is just silly. So most of the reaction, and this is kind of what I like about where I think like the world is going, it does seem like, and I've been speculating on this for months now, or maybe even years, I guess you could say. It seems like the world will not react to Trump winning the same way they did in 2016. Trump's probably going to win on Tuesday. I don't know. Maybe something crazy will happen. Maybe he won't. But let's pretend he does. There will be the people that make the videos of them crying, and there are people that won't show up at college or work and take the day off for mental health. And maybe SNL will do something douchey again, like they did with Kate McKinnon singing Hallelujah. All of that might happen, but the world will not shut down and cater to those people the way they did 8 years ago. I truly believe that, because I think now we're at a point where there is we've heard enough of it. We know it's a scam for attention and clicks and all that stuff. And the thing I was most happy to see, was that the last Tony clip we had?
Of the Madison Square Garden, yes.
Yeah. So what made me happy was seeing Jon Stewart's response to it, because clearly Jon Stewart was a better Daily Show host than Trevor Noah and the people that have been there since. Jon Stewart was the guy, but then I was in my mind, I was like, it was a different time. Would Jon Stewart have been as crazy with Trump? Maybe we're romanticizing how good Jon Stewart was. And in one clip, I was immediately like, oh no, he was the guy. You can be a funny liberal. You can talk politics, be extremely left-wing, and be funny. And Jon Stewart proves it here, much like he did with Colbert that time, the Wuhan coronavirus thing. Hold on, whoa. X-rated.
Huh.
If you want to say R-rated, I'll grant you that. X-rated. Isn't that specifically pornography?
Yeah, I didn't hear any sex jokes.
Not sex jokes. Did Tony pull his cock out and fuck something?
He said come, and that made all of their fucking hairs curl up. They can't say come anymore.
That's X-rated? You could say that in an
X-rated.
R-rated film, I believe.
Yeah, you can say it on YouTube all you want, but not while running for president. Don't have anyone say come anywhere near you. That's the rule.
All those clips are crazy. To call it hate-filled, to use hate-filled and jokes in the same sentence is so crazy. But to say X-rated is the most hilarious one of those.
It's giving him a lot of credit. Those jokes were bland.
Do these people see they did what's perfect? There are people speculating, did Tony purposely tank this for the liberals? Did Trump want him to be really racist? There are all kinds of conspiracy theories behind this. I'll tell you, I don't know Tony Hinchcliffe. Never met the guy. I'll tell you exactly why he did it. It's for the reason that played out over the last week. People talked about Tony Hinchcliffe for a week, and Kill Tony's numbers will probably go up. More people know him right now than knew him a week ago when I was talking at this time. So that's why he did it. He didn't do it to get Trump elected. He did it for Tony Hinchcliffe, and it worked perfectly.
And isn't the point of comedy kind of to make people squirm and say the uncomfortable things that are funny, because that's what makes it funny?
Yeah. Did you, Casey, were you the one that sent me that Anthony Jeselnik clip?
Yes, it's my favorite clip of all time.
Well, so here's what's interesting about Jeselnik, though. I kind of agree with him to a point, but Jeselnik does fake shock humor. If you think about it. What Jeselnik is doing is ooh, it shocks you. It could get him in trouble. But no baby died. His mom isn't a pedophile. Whatever joke he's making didn't actually happen.
Right.
Whereas these guys actually are being dangerous and kind of putting stuff on the line because they're doing things that could get you in trouble. So Anthony Jeselnik has a point when he says people shouldn't complain as much about doing edgy humor and that getting you in trouble. Well, that's what guys like Tony Hinchcliffe actually are doing, because Tony's been through this before with the Peng Dang thing. He knows there's going to be backlash, but now they're using cancel culture to their advantage. So it's kind of like we were talking about with Stuttering John before, where it's they're doing it to fuel themselves. You getting angry about it is exactly what they want, because now people are saying Tony Hinchcliffe's name over and over again. People that never heard of him a week ago now will probably check out Kill Tony.
This is a solid business decision. Let's not overlook that part of it too, because it's not like Tony Hinchcliffe has this deep pocket of liberal fans, right? And so he just doubles down on the group that really likes him. Make that candle twice as bright, maybe lasts half as long, because it doesn't, like Jordan said, Republicans buy shoes too. So that's the thing that always confuses me. why not be universal about it? But if your fan base is that strong, why not double down on it? It makes sense, you know?
Yeah, but I'll say this. I think it's different. I think Nick DiPaolo, like the way he talks about politics and stuff, absolutely will turn some people off. Like I'm sure are people that are liberals that won't listen to Nick DiPaolo anymore. Tony Hinchcliffe's style, like when this election's over, you're never gonna hear him talk politics again. You know, like he's not actually a politically minded guy. Which is again why him doing this was for him. It wasn't to get Trump elected. He was thinking selfishly, and I don't say that in a bad way. You know, like if you're smart enough to pull it off, you should do the same thing. But let's get back to Jon Stewart. The thing about that is the Tom Brady Netflix roast was like one of, if not the comedy event of the year. It's a rare time where like everyone was watching the same thing at the same time and commenting on it. And the consensus was, oh, that was really funny. And even like you heard people say after that, like, hey, edgy comedy's back. Like we can make jokes and not get in trouble for them, that type of shit. You hear there Tony Hinchcliffe make a slave joke about Kevin Hart. I don't remember headlines where it's like this vile, X-rated, so-called jokes. Like I don't remember those headlines being written after the Tom Brady roast. And why? Because they can't claim that Donald Trump is also a monster. That was the reason. This is Jon just being like, this is where Jon actually is a comedian as opposed to these people grandstanding and trying to shame Tony. Like, you forget with the people, anyone that came out against Tony and was like, this is ridiculous. If you're tweeting that or putting the clip out in your podcast and you're tagging Tony Hinchcliffe or hashtagging things, you're also doing it for your own benefit. So don't act like you have this moral high ground. You also want to get clicks off of Tony Hinchcliffe's name. It was so horrible, you wouldn't be trying to benefit from it if it was a real tragedy. Like, put it this way, the day after the Sandy Hook shooting, you weren't going and making clips, hashtag Sandy Hook, and giving your hot takes. If it was a real tragedy, you wouldn't be doing that. But you're trying to uplift yourselves from Tony Hinchcliffe, whereas Jon Stewart here is simply just being a comedian and taking what would be an unpopular stance with his people. It was just refreshing to see like that. You forget that's what political humor used to be. Like Jon Stewart actually made fun of the news. It wasn't attacking the right and trying to take them down.
Well, people were waiting for him to be the voice of reason every evening.
And he certainly was that. Now, you heard Jon Stewart's measured response and a voice of sanity. Richard took a slightly different angle. And I also wanted to take this as a chance to mention, I think we're going to play the Richard Ojeda drinking game.
Oh, great.
Using either Tuesday or Wednesday's show. I guess we'll see how it goes. It depends on the election results, but we'll see possibly both. But whatever is the most vintage Richard, I think we'll play the Ojeda drinking game at some point in the near future. I'll have to get Craig's schedule because I know he won't want to miss that, but I think that could be fun.
You just changed my vote on that one, Mike. Goddamn. Should have had you up on stage. All right, here, this one's called Tony is a Pawn.
Yeah, so this is Richard's take on this whole thing, where I believe Richard thought this was actually, we had teleported back to 1939, and we were actually at a Nazi rally.
Stomp. I was talking to Jon before we come on here, and he said a word that absolutely makes perfect sense. This is about desensitizing people. You know, when these people come out and they call people, a garbage island, they speak, called murderers and rapists. What that does is some people will hear that, and it just makes it easier for them to allow that type of rhetoric. It desensitizes them, and what that's for is that when this is over with, if Donald Trump is successful and he decides to go round up all these Latino people, if they have desensitized the Latino people in the minds of these poorly educated jackaloons across this country, they're more likely to turn the other way while this takes place. The German population in the 30s and 40s was desensitized to the Jewish population.
Yep, and you know how they did it. They had a guy get up and tell jokes. That was old Adolf's classic approach. He had fucking Henny Youngman come out and give a few zingers.
It wouldn't have been him.
Is Jackaloon a racial slur?
No, but it's the way Richard uses it does feel borderline.
It struck me as odd.
But can we play? Do you have that Trump clip I sent you
No. Which
Instagram? It doesn't matter. I can explain it. I was disappointed. Trump came out. They asked him about Tony Hinchcliffe. This is before the garbage truck thing. They asked him about Tony Hinchcliffe, and he said, "I don't know who the guy was. I don't want to know him." Like, he kind of just threw Tony under the bus, which disappointed me as a guy who's like, Trump claims he's for free speech and all of this. Like, he's the party that kind of should be supporting comedy. So I was disappointed by that. But it also completely flies in the face of what Richard is saying, where it's like, he wanted Tony to desensitize you. It's like, well, no, he actually kind of threw him under the bus and ran away from it.
Well, there goes his chance to be on that podcast.
Yes.
Did he really blow the mic, though? Because I saw that. Was that, like, fake, or was that real?
It was real.
Did he blow the mic?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
you can't, Mike, you didn't see this, but Trump fellatiated the microphone. It was interesting.
Oh, that's just to show that the wink to the audience. See, I do know who Tony Hinchcliffe is.
Okay. I suppose.
This one's called Vetted.
Yeah, so this is Richard talking about how it's first of all, I don't think they vetted the jokes. I don't think there's any way.
No.
Like, I think they just said, but I do think it was purposeful. I think they said, we'll have a guy like Tony come up and roast the crowd and roast what's going on in the news, whatever. Like, he's a roast style comedian. They had some idea of what he was doing, and they basically said, have at it. This is Richard saying it was a little more organized than that, apparently.
Donald Trump is spewing hatred. And oh, by the way, you do realize that people have to be vetted before you get to go to a rally and speak like that. That guy let them know the type of jokes he was going to say. To sit and call Puerto Rico a friggin' garbage nation? Folks, in 2004, 2005, that was the worst year of combat in Iraq.
Whoa.
And I was there. And do you know who I saw? I didn't see Donald
Saddam
Trump.
Hussein.
He's got to say a Puerto Rican.
See none of his kids. But I saw the Puerto Rican National Guard risking their lives every day. They fight this nation's wars.
Hey, hold on. Could someone... We should tell Tony that. We should tell Tony that Richard saw Puerto Ricans in Iraq. He probably won't do that joke anymore.
You know, we do have a veteran here on the show that might be able to speak to that. Matt, do you remember seeing Puerto Ricans?
I can't confirm I saw any there.
Interesting.
Wow, that really flies in the face of what Richard said. Folks, run with that. There were no Puerto Ricans in Iraq.
Yeah, there might have been.
Do you think it would really change? Do you think Tony's unaware that there are some Puerto Ricans that are good people? Do you think he's not aware of that? Or was he just telling jokes, Richard? Like, fucking relax, man. Do you think you've interacted with Richard a little more than I have, Casey? Do you think if we had him on, he would understand that and he's just performing here? Like, if I had a reasonable talk with him, would he get where I was coming from?
Yes, I do, because he does have the ability to reason out right and wrong, and he just, it's voting season, Mike. You got to be
so
a little
fired up.
Yeah,
but
day after the election is a different.
He gets fired up in a way that's not even really fun to goof on anymore. That's why we haven't played a lot of Richard. It's nice to see him again. We haven't talked about Richard in a long time because he doesn't interact with the chat or anything that's fun to goof on. He's just kind of yelling about the same shit every day.
Yeah, every 4 years he kind of gets radioactive, but then it's over, and he's kind of fun to be around again because all he talks about the holler and the ladies in the holler and stuff.
Yeah.
They ante up. When it's time to do something, you can always count on the Puerto Ricans. My best soldier that I ever had, that I am very proud to say I submitted for a Green to Gold scholarship. And today he's wearing the same rank that I retired as. And he's getting ready to get promoted and outrank me. And I could not be happier.
Hey, someone quick, tell Tony there's a Puerto Rican that's better than Richard Ojeda. That'll change everything.
Very close to have a black friend. I got to say, Richard, be careful.
But like Tony's hat, like, one of the most frequent guests in the history of Kill Tony is Luis J. Gomez.
I know, that's right.
The clip that we pulled from was from a clip entitled "Puerto Rican Comedian Luis J. Gomez Responds to Tony Hinchcliffe," which I thought was very funny. But like on Tony's show, the people that he's lifted up and essentially given careers to are Hans Kim, who's Asian, Cam Patterson and David Lucas, who are black, Kim Congdon, who's a Puerto Rican woman,
a number of people with mental disabilities,
mental and physical disabilities. Like the people that Tony has platformed
Austin Ingalls
are not Austin Ingalls.
Well, that's a great example of somebody that he wouldn't, because he's too good and,
too handsome.
He has none of these lines anyway. He's a nice white boy.
Right. Yeah, but like if you look at the people that's why it's so ridiculous. Like the people that Kill Tony has platformed, say what you want about their comedy, it's a diverse group.
That's why this politics season sucks, because people have these pre-built agendas, and the second you say that buzzword, it's like, all right, release the Kraken commercials about he's in Puerto Rico. We can do the Puerto Rico stuff now.
Right.
He was an amazing, and still is, an amazing leader. This comedian has the gall, the nerve to say something like that. And once again, these people, they are absolutely vetted for this.
All right.
The thing that I think about there is how many times Richard almost took and did take shrapnel and firearm and missiles for our right to be terrible on stage and say whatever we want. That's the whole point of the American military, Richard.
And then he just comes back and says, don't make any Puerto Rican jokes.
Goddamn. No excuses. This one.
Yeah, so there are. I thought the excuse would be he's a comedian and he was joking. I thought that would be the excuse. I'm told I was wrong about that. There are actually no excuses.
Is that a hammer? And I don't give two shits about this daggone comedian, Hinchcliffe or whatever his name is.
Well, you got it right.
Let me tell you something. I don't tolerate racism.
That's a good point, David. He clearly learned his name. I don't know why people do. It's a tactic as old as time. For some reason, people do this thing where like they think it's getting over on the other person. It's like a criticism if you don't know their name. It's actually a criticism of you. Like if I forget someone's name that I'm talking about, it means I was ill prepared. It's not besting them or owning them. It's actually like kind of you fucking up.
Let me tell you something. I don't tolerate racism, and that's exactly what he was doing. And you know what? You can claim
it was
he's
probably
a comedian.
pretty shocking to this Tony Hinchcliffe, though, how few people in the country actually did know it.
David, we're losing you again, buddy.
A comedian doesn't get a pass. A comedian does not get a pass to spew friggin' racism. Period. I don't care who you are. What that man said.
Are you sure about that, Richard? Because that's kind of your boy Stuttering John's excuse whenever people bring up him using the N-word and the F-word.
It's not good.
All kinds of stuff back in the day. Howard Stern. We can get rid of David now again. Sorry, David.
Yep.
Wednesday morning, drive time, David Collins, 7:30 a.m. The tech is usually better than that. I guarantee it. What's going on with David? Is he pranking us? What's the deal?
I just think that I honestly I'm going to
get
with him.
Terrible.
I'm going to get with him afterward. I'm going to see what his internet's like. Everyone thinks, this is the best internet I can get until you call your service provider and they're like, oh, no, you can do 4 times better for $20 cheaper. And so it's probably just something like that. We'll fix it up. I'm on the
acceptable. And he was vetted. Vote accordingly. Once again, Donald Trump is talking about rounding up 2 to 3 million Latinos.
Whoa.
Vote accordingly. Because let me tell you something. They don't give a shit about you. What they are trying to do is desensitize the people in this country so that when they do round up people that are Latino and Hispanic, well, everybody will just say, well, they're gone. They're gone. Let me tell you something, folks. If it wasn't for immigrants, goodness gracious, we'd be in a world of hurt. And you know what? This is the thing. This is what's really bad.
Oh, Richard. So Richard has been advocating this for a while. He thinks that when Trump gets into office, there's going to be a Holocaust, essentially.
Oh, geez.
He's like, Trump is going to round up millions of people and put them in camps or something. I don't know what he thinks is going to happen. My rebuttal to that, I'm not a political guy, but my rebuttal to that would be like, he was president already, and that we've already seen that not happen. So I don't get why Ojeda's scare tactic is like he is Hitler. It's like, well, we've seen that not be true already.
Also, I think he's right. Comedy does desensitize, but he's wrong in how it desensitizes. Comedy is always used to like make things that you're afraid of less fearful.
Right.
That's always
it allows you to laugh at things that you otherwise wouldn't. But if 2 million Latinos were rounded up and executed, I wouldn't be like, well, I mean, that Dave Chappelle sure did desensitize me to things. So
right.
I don't really care anymore, actually. I don't have feelings anymore because I've laughed at jokes.
It would be an interesting theory to like have the Army Major come and watch a comedy special, you know, like and just sort of like, what do you think about this, Army Major? Like, this is funny, right? Because he would get into it, and I mean, I don't know if he'd like Hinchcliffe, but he would understand a joke's a joke. This is tied to the goddamn election. That's why it's fucking nuclear.
Here's what's infuriating about that is if that set was at a Harris rally, no one would give. Everyone would understand it was jokes. Oh, I mean, it's hard to put it in that context because obviously the Harris campaign is not hiring Tony Hinchcliffe to do stand-up at a rally, so it's a ridiculous concept. But I'm just saying, if he had a blue background behind him, no one would give a fuck about this. They're not the edgiest jokes ever uttered. They're not the most shocking or offensive. They were kind of whatever. At worst, you could call them like kind of hack, like shit we've heard before. It wasn't that crazy. But like the Garbage Island thing, like it's kind of a good line because it's a misdirect. You don't think that's where he's going. So it's like whatever. Like who cares? You could say you don't find it funny, but the idea that Tony's a Nazi because of it, you wouldn't notice it. Like you said, if we showed Richard Tony Hinchcliffe's special, I don't know if he'd laugh or not, but he wouldn't be clutching his pearls in this manner.
Go to blindmike.net for everything Blind Mike. Look at me. I did it. Kragers did it.